All right, so today I want to go into a little bit more depth and detail into a story that we did talk about in like a two-part video when it comes to Switch 2 news, but it was a wild claim and I still am not fully on board with the fact of Nintendo actually going forward with this quick reveal time and turnaround and launch of a Switch 2 console. But of course, a lot of eyes are on Nintendo and the launch and what they're going to do with this next-gen hardware. And so when leakers come out of the woodworks, things get picked up, headlines fly out there like wildfire online, and before you know it, a lot of people are getting their hopes and expectations set towards something that may or may not happen at the end of the day, to be fair. But the reason I want to revisit this particular story is because we do have some more context on the individual that was responsible, at least one of the two sources. One of them I'm kind of just throwing away. It's a Family Boards account that I don't think has any really track record or history other than they're claiming to have a source that has had everything right since 2020. But then there's this Weibo poster who, if you're not familiar with the site Weibo, it's like the Chinese version of Twitter, and it was hard to verify what this person had accurately leaked before, but they did make the following post: officially announced in January, released in March. The first month shipments in various regions have been confirmed, and this has been later clarified that the number in reference here is 6.5 million, and they're pointing out that NS was 2.7 million. And then the production scale of some parts have reached hundreds of thousands since September, and there is news that T239 has started to ship in large quantities recently. And you may or may not remember that we have actually seen official shipping manifests from customs, like their actual publicly verifiable information that does show that Nintendo is ramping up the number of components like at a rapid pace, essentially signifying that this thing is either about to start mass production, meaning like a finalized retail product, or at the very least all of the moving puzzle pieces are in place for them to be able to start mass production. And Nintendo's going to have that issue of, if they don't reveal it before mass production, there is that likelihood of seeing some legit leaks pop up out of these factories that are producing these things, and that may end up happening if we are waiting until January for a reveal. And it seems like all of the components are in place for Nintendo to start mass producing this thing. You might also remember that Nintendo had a work in progress inventory number that was spotted at their most recent financial briefing, which is at a record all-time high. And what work in progress inventory means is essentially that components are being placed together. So maybe not a finalized Switch 2 retail product, but if the main board goes with the T239, that is now a work in progress piece of inventory, and Nintendo has that self-reported at an all-time historical company high. And we also have comments from Furukawa that the way that Nintendo is trying to offset scalping and kind of a stock issue at launch this time around is just to produce as many shipments as humanly possible. Then we have that Nin Spider account that actually was the first one claiming that magnets would be a thing for Switch 2 in terms of how the Joy-Cons connect and some other information. Well, that was then corroborated by a bunch of accessory manufacturers for Nintendo's next-gen hardware that would seemingly know that magnets are indeed how the Joy-Cons are going to connect to this next console, and they were saying that Nintendo is planning something like a 6+ million unit run of this first console in its launch month for a worldwide release, which is like 2.75 times the amount they did for the original Switch, which would line up if you think that a certain percentage of us Nintendo consumers, after 8 full years essentially since the last console release, are going to be ready for a day one upgrade. And so the reason this story has gotten a lot more interesting to me is that the last time we talked about it, this Chinese user over on Weibo, while interesting with the post that they had, I was kind of going off of the word of Necro Felipe, who did do a write-up over at Universo Nintendo and pointed out that this individual had indeed leaked information at the June Direct, and maybe even some things before that basically they were garnering a following online because everything that they posted and teased ahead of that June presentation ended up coming true. And while that was one source saying that this other source was credible, you're still just going off of hearsay on a different article online. Now we have Centro Leaks over from X that has gone through and actually provided screenshots with what was teased from this user from the June Direct, which, keep in mind, massive, asterisk and grain of salt here, just because a user may have inside information on first-party Nintendo software releases and it all turned out to be true, it doesn't necessarily mean they have the launch timing for sure communicated to them from Nintendo for their next-gen hardware. Even accounts like Pioro, who have accurately leaked just about, I don't know how many first-party Nintendo titles at this point in time, have stated things like only Furukawa knows, until they really bring in all their partners into the fold and deliver the reveal and launch timeline. They're not going to share that with large branches of the company within Nintendo. So maybe this individual got a bunch of game stuff right, and they also garnered a following online, but then they're speculating whenever it comes to this quick turnaround launch time. But it's also just crazy enough, as much as I don't want to believe it or get any hopes or expectations set towards it, it's also just sounds crazy enough to be a Nintendo thing that they may end up actually doing. But you can see this post from Central Leaks, which points out the following, where it's basically a string of all the different tweets prior to that June Direct, where it's a repost. If there is a 2D Zelda, I will announce Nintendo is the greatest company of 2024. And all of these reposts are kind of like hinting as if they don't know what's going to be in the Direct, but then it is all teasing stuff that was ultimately in the Direct. Here it is, Metroid Prime 4, and of course they're referencing like a first four figures thing of Samus, but they're teasing Metroid Prime 4. We of course saw that be the show closer of that Direct. Then there's a repost. I wonder what games will be in the Direct, and I feel like this year's holiday title is Mario Party. There were some existing rumors of Mario Party online because of the codename Banquet going around. We talked about that here on this channel. Super Mario Party's code name was Buffet, so Banquet was maybe the next Super Mario Party. And then you also have like that 3-year release timeline that they typically stick to, and it was kind of time for another one. Well, anyway, then you have surprise for Dragon Quest 1 through 3 remake. This was rumored, but also while 1 through 3 was kind of being talked about online, I mean, it sounded like Dragon Quest 3 was the most solid. We got the announcement we would get 3 first, then 1 and 2 later, so that also checks out. AA fan base is horrible. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what that's teasing, but I'm assuming it's something that was featured in this Direct in some capacity because it is on this list of evidence. King of Ports, Ace Attorney investigations, basically, another tease for something that we did see Nintendo ultimately do, and then 2 posts about Saga 2. And so all of that to say, this user was either incredibly lucky with a lot of different guesses and hypothetical predictions on what Nintendo would reveal at their Direct, or they do have a inside source with Nintendo's internal plans. And if that is the case, maybe we need to take this rumor just a little bit more seriously. And that's where I really want to talk about, is it even possible? Because this is something I'm seeing brought up a lot online. Could Nintendo actually turn around and launch a console literally 2 months, maybe 2.5, or closer to 3, depending on if an announcement is at the beginning of January and a launch is later into the month of March? And that's where I want to dive into this a bit further, because I do actually think it's entirely possible. Like, there's this notion going around that Nintendo has to communicate what this system is and what it's going to do and all of that, and they really need 6 months or more, to really get that across to consumers and kind of create all of the hype and awareness that you need for the Nintendo fan base to be able to go pick this up day one. The interesting thing, though, that would kind of explain everything that we've been seeing go on this last year would actually be a very short reveal to release time like this, because I've been calling into question, why would Nintendo have communicated so early on back in May 7th of 2024 that they will be revealing their next gen console within this fiscal year, and then just sit silent and wait all the way until next year? And some people are expecting a reveal not to happen until March of next year. So why are you tweeting that out almost a full year in advance? Then you have to go and show up to each of your event announcements and say there will be no mention of the Switch successor at this showcase, and you're just kind of keeping it in fans' minds that we have this pending announcement coming for a major successor console to the Switch, but it's not here yet. And then you have this interesting confirmation, and we've never seen Nintendo really do this before, where they still have not shown off the system. They're referring to it as the Switch successor, and now we know it supports full backwards compatibility with the current Switch, and Nintendo Switch Online is rolling forward. Keep in mind, the name of the service, Nintendo Switch Online, is going forward to the next gen console, so it's either getting rebranded or Switch is staying in the title, which I believe it is, and Nintendo may do a numerical console for the first time ever and just call it Nintendo Switch 2, so it's clear to consumers what it is. And if it's in that type of mindset where this is obviously an iterative system, it's an iteration on the Nintendo Switch, taking it to the next generation in terms of power, but it's largely the same concept, and what it does, a Switch, is still the same core feature, there could be in Nintendo's mind a world to launch this and market it like it's a revision, like it's a light console or the OLED, where we just learn about the trailer for the new system and then we get the pre-order links shortly thereafterwards. There is a possibility that Nintendo could do something that crazy, but then you have to stop and think they don't typically do something that short of a turnaround with their major first-party software, and just about everybody, including myself, is expecting the big launch game day one that's going to market this system and be the absolute reason that everybody needs to go upgrade to it, is because there's going to be a Switch 2 exclusive 3D Mario, maybe open world, that launches alongside of it. And would they want to only market that Mario and make, and of course we are talking about a March release. Mario Day is March 10th. It would literally be perfect time. I don't think it would launch on Mario Day, but you know, to have a Mario AAA game and be able to basically do like a Mario Direct on March 10th and then turn around and launch it towards the end of the month, like that is on the table. It is a possibility, but it would also just be very unprecedented and something that Nintendo hasn't really done before. And then you have the Xenoblade Chronicles X situation, where some people saying, well, that's a March game. Nintendo's not going to turn around and launch a console also in that same month. But that's a game that we've already had out on the Wii U, and Xenoblade Chronicles, while it's got a great loyal fan base, it is not the juggernaut franchise that Mario, Zelda, or Animal Crossing, anything like that, or Smash Bros. It's not to that level of scale. So I really don't think that Nintendo launching a first-party game for the current Switch would offset or affect any plans for their next-gen console hardware. And if anything, it's just reminding fans, hey, we're launching new hardware. There's going to be some exclusive games on this next one, but we still have games for you Switch users to play. So that one doesn't necessarily take away from this theory, in my opinion, and it's just gotten that much more interesting to me now that we have some kind of verifiable track record with this user. But again, I'm keeping this very much on the lower side of my expectations. I would love a March launch for this next gen console. We learn about it early January. It launches mid to late March. I think that would be absolutely incredible. Maybe it even launches early March, and Mario Day is just kind of like that event that we learn about a bunch of games coming from the Mario franchise, and that helps pad out the launch lineup with the 3D Mario. Maybe Mario Galaxy 2 comes over with an HD, more like in-depth remaster than what we got with even Galaxy 1, and that's another first-party game that you can pick up right around the launch of the console. And they may tell us about some future Mario projects that are coming down the road that will launch later on in the year. Like, it actually could end up being a pretty exciting time, but again, nothing's official till Nintendo confirms it. This source did get a little bit more interesting to me, so I wanted to revisit that topic with you guys and really hear whether or not you think there's any world that it's even possible for Nintendo to turn around and announce a console and get it launched on retail store shelves within, you know, essentially 2.5 months or less, more than likely, from reveal to launch time. Do you think that's something that Nintendo would actually do, considering they did it with like the Switch Lite and just about 3 months on the Switch OLED? Or do you think that with this being a true next-gen console, it needs that 4.5, 5, or 6 months minimum before we should expect any kind of launch from the reveal event? But let me know in the comments down below what you make of all of this, and what games would you most like to see launch alongside of the Switch 2, and does this user having some verifiable track record attached to that June Direct and a lot of first-party announcements make you any more hopeful that this reveal in January and launch in March is actually a true story? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.